Behind the Glass. Soul to Soul with Steve Gleason.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Satya. I know you are joining after taking questions from 120,000 people, so I will try to keep you on your toes. This won't be the last time I say this, my friend, but I'm so grateful to you and your leadership, and your philosophy on life and business. I have literally thousands of people to thank, simply for being alive, and you, Satya Nadella, are on the top of my list.
Thank you so much, Steve, and it's really a pleasure to be able to join you on this interview.
And on top of that, I'm living a purposeful life. And here I am talking to the CEO of Microsoft, one of the most impactful organizations in the known universe. I know you're not really religious, but you're living in a place of empathy, awareness, and soul. You are a guru of empathy and wisdom, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you, Satya.
Thank you so much, Steve.
I think you have 3 questions for me, so I'm ready to dive in.
Absolutely. So let's do that. One of the things, let's talk about fatherhood, Steve, because for me, becoming a father was a profound experience of my own life. My son Zain has helped me, quite frankly, better understand myself through looking at life through his eyes, his journey. It's really shaped a lot of how I think about what people with disabilities go through, but more importantly, learned a ton to inspire me as both as a father and a parent and as a person about in the world. And I just wanted to ask you as to how has fatherhood and that journey shaped your own personal passion and philosophy?
I love this question, Satya. Thanks. As you know, fatherhood has been a primary purpose for me, since Michelle and I found out that we were pregnant with our son, Rivers, in 2011. I believe that parenting, especially as we enter the depths of the 21st century, is the most important, and the most difficult, and the most exciting job humanity has. I put a ton of effort and pride into being a solid father. I'd say, the first thing to point out is that, despite the fact that I can't move or talk, with the help of some super badass and innovative technology, much of which has been developed by Microsoft employees, I'm able to truly connect with my family. I'm able to not only guide and teach my kids, Satya, but in my journey as a father, I've found that I learn so much from Rivers, and our 18-month-old daughter, Gray. Additionally, Satya, something that has shaped me on this fatherhood journey is, parenting is less about me playing the parent role of dictating orders, telling them what to do, or disciplining Rivers and Gray. Clearly this is part of our duty as parents. But, if that is all my fatherhood journey is about, then I've missed the mark. You know this as well as anyone, Satya. The challenges and the changes that our kids will face will be vastly different from the challenges and changes our generation, or any previous generation has faced. More and more, Satya, this fatherhood journey is showing me that I'm on the adventure of life, right along with our kids. We're all learning and growing together. If I can be fully present with them, and show them that I love them unconditionally, while guiding them to be independent, compassionate, self-disciplined, mindful, and purposeful, I believe that is the greatest gift I can give them, as they proceed with their lives.
So beautifully put. You've captured, I think, the essence of what we all learn from that privilege of being fathers. The other area that I know is deep for you and you've spent a lot of time is creating those communities. In fact, using technology and creating community. And I was going to ask you, how do you foster and keep that human connection alive at a time when many people are having challenges during this pandemic to keep that human connection? So I know you've thought deeply about this. Thoughts on that?
It seems that this is the question of not only this year, Satya, but also the question of the decade, and maybe the question of the century. How do we create a real human connection with people when everyone is behind the glass of their phones, tablets, and computers? ALS is a disease that quarantines and isolates in its very nature. So, in a way, for the past 9 years, our family has been experiencing something similar to what the world is experiencing right now. Our family is fairly well adapted to finding creative solutions for building a true human connection in times of adversity. I think that a lot of people who are out of work or facing other effects of the COVID pandemic are feeling a loss of purpose, loss of independence or freedom, or, at the worst, they're feeling disconnected and irrelevant with this adversity. I know all of those feelings quite intimately with the loss of connection I've faced with ALS. While the COVID pandemic has caused severe change for an extraordinary amount of our human family, I think that, with the exponential pace in technology developments, severe change may be the new normal for the rest of the 21st century. It's possible that I'm biased, because technology has been the conduit to me finding solutions to my loss of human connection. But I share your optimism, Satya, about our future with machines and humans collaborating to create a future that is better than today. To move beyond loss and the sense of irrelevance I was feeling as my physical abilities declined, I relied on some things that I'm calling life skills, and these skills have helped me move beyond loss of purpose and a loss of human connection. Some of these life skills include focus, self-discipline, gratitude, innovation, compassion, or as you say, empathy, resilience, collaboration, and mindfulness. They really don't teach these in schools, at least not now, Satya. But these skills have lifted me from the darkness of irrelevance to ascend and feel purposeful and connected again. I'm feeling pretty connected to you, my brother Satya.
Thank you so much.
I'm loving this. What you got for your last question, my man?
Thank you so much, Steve. Well, very well put. I know music is super important to you. So I was going to ask you, what are you listening to right now?
As you may know, Satya, I love music. It brings a healing frequency to my body and my mind. Satya, our poet friend, T.S. Eliot once wrote, or music heard so deeply that it is not heard at all, but you are the music, while the music lasts. I was a freshman in high school in 1991, which was a perfect time to be in Washington State with the Seattle grunge scene. And in general, the 90s was one of the great decades in rock. I love Pearl Jam, so I'm listening to their new album, Gigaton. Many people have asked me how I feel about it, so right here right now, I will say that I think that Gigaton is one of their great albums. I cannot wait to hear it live. I'll be interviewing Mike McCready in another conversation, Behind the Glass. We're also playing a lot of jazz for our 18-month-old daughter. So I'm loving me some Stan Getz right now. And I'm loving the last Tool album, Fear Inoculum. They fuel my soul. Great question, my friend. Okay, thanks again for taking the time to do this with me, Satya. We call this program Soul to Soul for a reason. I enjoy exploring the truth beyond what we are taught in buildings. So I'm going to dive right in the deep end, Satya. We last met a number of years ago, brother. In your truth, what do you think of my new haircut? I went into the barber and said, "Give me the Satya Nadella." They knew exactly what to do.
Oh, I'm so thrilled that now I've transcended to a fashion god. It's the easiest haircut when you have no hair.
Okay, next question, Satya. If you were going to recommend one book, one single book, to help navigate through the next decade, or the next 8 decades, what would that one single book be that you recommend, Satya?
That's a great question. For me, the book that's influenced my thinking starting this decade, it's a good metaphor even, is a book written by an Oxford economist called Prosperity by Colin Mayer. It was very helpful. I read it last year. It was very helpful for me to really ground myself as a CEO of a large multinational company. What is the role of a multinational company? What's the role of a corporation? What's the social contract? And what's the social purpose of a company? And he has this beautiful line in there, Steve, where he talks about the social purpose of companies is to find profitable solutions to the challenges of people and planet. Of course, they have to be profitable, but the idea that you have to fundamentally do something useful, which really addresses the needs out there for people and planet, I think is what needs to ground leaders like me, companies like Microsoft, and it's been very helpful. To your point about purpose, it really helps really bring that home. What is the purpose of a corporation?
I know you're a fan of poetry. I actually started writing poetry in 7th grade, Satya. I was influenced by Paul Simon. His lyrics inspired me to start writing. I continue to write today. In fact, I recently finished something for our daughter Gray's 18-month milestone. Do you write any poetry?
I love to read poetry. I wish I was better at writing poetry. And I must say, one of the things that I was reflecting on is my understanding of poetry, the same poems that I may have read when I was, say, an 18-year-old versus when I was a 30-year-old and now as a 50-year-old. It's so markedly different. It's fascinating how one understands the depths of what poets have captured and poetry captures about the human condition, the more life goes on.
Yup, the meanings evolve with us. I'm not sure if you read Jane Hurstfield, but I am a big fan of her poems. One in particular, it's titled, The Weighing.
Beautiful, I'll check it out.
I know you are a fan of T.S. Eliot. He wrote something that has really resonated with me. What we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. How do you interpret those lines, Satya?
Yeah, I mean, I think T.S. Eliot in particular captures, I think, what it means to explore, right? That other lines of his, which I love, is that you never cease from exploration. And the end of all exploration, you arrive where you started and know the place for the very first time. That ability. In fact, recently, I was reading one of my mom's diaries, and she passed away a couple of years ago, and she had written, paraphrasing, in fact, another person I had not known much about, but I've recently learned a lot, is Kierkegaard, where he talks about this notion of human experience being, we reflect about our past, we forecast out into the future, but the purpose of all reflection is to arrive at the immediacy and act. And I think that a bit of what T.S. Eliot captures is a lot of that elegance in a very, very compact way.
Yep, we're all born as explorers. We're closely connected in our family fatherhood situation, Satya, with a bit of a twist. I'm a severely disabled father of an ordinary child. And you're an ordinary father of a disabled child. I like to think that my situation, while more difficult than many, my situation requires and amplifies the exact same principles to live a purposeful life as an ordinary human. Said another way, people who don't have disabilities can, in a sense, drift through life. ALS is a terminal disease, and I'm 7 years past the expiration date the experts gave me. This has allowed me to look more closely at my human purpose. That has been the gift, Satya, I have received from my circumstance with ALS. I sense that you are in a similar position, Satya, with your son Zain and your family. So, my question for you is, in light of Zain's situation, I'd like to learn, in your life as a father, which aspects have been magnified as critical to your purpose as a human?
It's one of the things I think a lot about, Steve. And when Zain was born to Anu and me, we were both sort of only children of our parents, and he was our first child. We were in our mid to late 20s. And I distinctly went through, quite frankly, Steve, a phase where I felt like, wow, all my ideas of normalcy and what I expected of, with the coming of our first child and how life would be, was all thrown upside down, right? Because he was born because of in utero asphyxiation with severe damage to his brain, and so therefore he has cerebral palsy and is dependent on us. And I must say, then I saw my wife. My wife got up, out of the C-section, as she recovered from it, was going up and down, Seattle, trying to get Zain the best care, the best support. Then I watched and learned and saw the empathy of the speech therapists, the occupational therapists, and all of the caregivers, the Children's Hospital in Seattle. And I must say, it was through their work I started learning to see life through Zain's experience and through Zain's eyes. And that's when I think I finally got it, that nothing happened to me. Something happened to my son. And I, as a father, needed to step up to be able to relate to him and do what, as a father, I needed to do. And that, I think, I wouldn't say it was one moment. It is years in the making. But it has been a profound impact. Even during this COVID-19 crisis, our entire household has revolved around Zain and his care and his caregivers and their safety, both health and economic security for them. I tell you, it's sort of been a great blessing. I mean, I wouldn't know what life would be for me and for my wife and my two other girls without Zain in our lives. So it's, as you say, I think we as human beings have the capacity to be able to learn from others, to be able to see life and the world through others' eyes. And I think the closest family teaches you that. And for sure, Zain has taught me a lot.
Right. Living in understanding and suffering with others. Empathy. I reread your book, Hit Refresh, The Quest to Rediscover the Soul of Microsoft, and Create a Better Future for Everyone. It's an enormously powerful book if you're in business, or if you're a human, and it's even more powerful if you're both of those things. Satya, in the book, you talk about how much your mother and her philosophy influenced you. I absolutely love the quote you included from her in your childhood. Part of her philosophy and message to you was, So long as you enjoy it, do it mindfully and well, and have an honest purpose behind it, life won't fail you. Brother, this is just ridiculously sublime, and totally awesome advice, Satya. This goes against what I'll call 20th century mentality, which is more cold and structured, more patriarchal, and intellectually ambitious. You clearly absorbed and exude her warmer, feminine philosophy. But, you are the leader of 150,000 employees, and in what might be the most competitive industry of our time. You also, clearly have the intellectual ambition. And it appears that you are able to, for the most part, keep the scales in balance, so to speak. I'm interested in this question. How have you been able to keep that mindful and honest purpose, leading with empathy? How do you keep that balanced, right along with also providing firm intellectual and analytic leadership?
Wow, that's a great question. In fact, it's interesting. You talked about that lesson about staying present, being mindful, having that sense of purpose give you deep satisfaction in what you do. And that's all what my mother cared about in her actions, in her words. As I think more about it, I definitely got that. And quite frankly, with my dad, I got all of that intellectual curiosity, that real love. He loved new ideas. My father would fall in love with new philosophers, economists, activists, and he was full of stories about what he had learned and why he was going to do what he was going to do next was the next biggest thing and the greatest change. And I think I combine the two. I get, in some sense, I've described, as I've reflected, I feel I love new ideas. And I think I want to use these new ideas as a way, as an instrument, if you will, to build more empathy, better understanding even of the human condition in its all forms, better understanding of people, communities, countries, this planet, and then ultimately to derive satisfaction by acting on it. And that's what keeps me centered. I sort of say a lot to even the 140,000 people who work at Microsoft, saying use Microsoft as a platform for your own personal philosophy and cause and your own passion. Because if you sort of think about it, of course it's work, but we all give a lot to work. It's many, many years. In fact, somebody once told me, I'll spend more time at Microsoft than perhaps with my own kids. It's definitely proving to be true because I'm in my 28th year at Microsoft. And given that, I think it has to have deeper meaning. And that deeper meaning is for us to seek out. It's to use the platform we've been given to be able to then have the impact that I think we each can have. And so that's how I stay centered. And it's been a very helpful way. Some of it is ex post rationalization, but as I think about it, I think that this has been my parents and what they stood for has obviously influenced a lot of how I think about the world.
Wonderful stuff, man. That's awesome. We'll follow the fatherhood theme with this question, Satya. I also see this question as one of my most important questions for you. I share your optimism that, if companies like Microsoft can lead with mindful empathy, the 21st century technology developments will help us, as a human family, grow more united, more whole, and more prosperous. I recently met with a couple of brain-machine interface organizations, Neuralink, and University of California, San Francisco. They are developing some pretty remarkable concepts, where powerful computers will be connected directly to the human brain. This is showing me that the future is right around the corner. I'd love to hear your ultimate dream of what the immense and seemingly miraculous power of technology can do for people like your son, Zane, and for people like me.
It's amazing, and it's so great to see that you're connected with what some of the work that UCSF is doing and what Neuralink is doing. I mean, ultimately, to me, the role that technology can play, even today, the eye gaze technology that you're using, I mean, it's obviously inspired, in fact, by the challenge you gave to Microsoft employees. It's so exciting to see it now in mainstream use in Windows, what Seeing AI is doing for people with vision impairment. What even Immersive Reader, Steve, is doing. In fact, in the time of COVID, to have the Immersive Reader help kids with dyslexia because you don't have the teacher right there to help you to be able to follow along and to be able to read. So I think there are many of these AI technologies that are helping people with of all abilities fully participate in our work and in our learning, because we think that that's sort of hugely important. But to your point, I do see that frontier. In fact, one of my projects that my daughter works on is this project around how can you put a dry cap on Zane and maybe even help him change and shuffle his music without having to sort of rely on any of us, because he does communicate, and he communicates clearly when he needs change in his music. But those are, those technologies felt far away, and there's a lot of still work to be done. But I think some of the advances in AI, the pattern recognition with weak signals, perhaps we can create more and more technology that can help us relate to one another better and give people with different abilities more of the abilities they need to fully participate in our family life, in our society, and as well as at work. So I'm excited about the possibilities there.
Okay, thanks so much for your time, Satya. I appreciate you and your work.
Thank you so much, Steve. It was really wonderful, and look forward to staying in touch. Stay well, and say hi to your kids and your wife for me, and I look forward to being in touch again.
Have a great day.
Thank you.